Ugly, boring, amateur. That's how I describe my art from just a few months ago. Fast forward to today, and sure, I'm not the second coming of Da Vinci or anything, but my art has improved much more rapidly than it has ever before in my entire life. So I'm gonna tell you about the study structure that I used to experience this growth in my art and how it all culminates in something that I like to call the 3 week cycle. But it all starts from phase one with a low info diet. We all know that we need to focus on the fundamentals. That's common knowledge. You don't need me to tell you that, right? It's the most foundational art advice. However, it's not that simple because even within the fundamentals, there's still so much stuff to work on. So how do you choose where to start? And think about how essential this is. If you mess up choosing what to draw, might as well throw the entire practice routine out the window. Because you see, when I began trying to take my art a lot more seriously, bro, I was all over the place. It was a summer, right? So I'd wake up in the morning and work on something like heads. And then later in the day work on shading. Then later in the night work on some personal project or something. Then wake up the next day, work on hair. Then later in the day work on color theory. And I was just all over the place trying to work on everything at once. And after a few weeks I kind of just sat there and thought to myself, man, here I am, I'm drawing so much. I'm drawing a lot more than I ever have before, but I still don't feel like I'm improving as much as I could. So I just kind of sat down and began to restructure everything, and this is where I began to implement low info diet. So the low info diet is a sort of productivity concept that I got from the author Tim Ferriss, and I kind of took it and adapted it to my art, and now it's like the principle that I use when it comes to actually choosing what to draw. And the idea here is the less information your brain is consuming, the more bandwidth it has to focus on the essential tasks. That's what I began to do with my art and what I was trying to work on. I began to just narrow things down to the point that I was focusing on just one thing, and at this time my main focus was going to be just heads. I was going to practice just heads and nothing else, instead of trying to work on all these things I was working on, like color and like shading and my hair, towards everything. I just took all that energy and laser focused it on just drawing heads. And I believe this is critical, to work on that one thing and get a lot better at that one thing instead of just trying to get kind of better at like 30 different things. That makes sense? But this is literally just phase one. So now that I was at a point where I knew what I wanted to draw, I still had to figure out, how am I going to practice this thing effectively? And that brings me on to phase two, which is all about the session structure. And that's exactly what it sounds like. This is where I actually sit down to draw, and I divide my session into two parts: the warm-up and the art study. So I neglected warm-ups for the longest time because I thought to myself, it's just warm-ups, bro, who cares about warm-ups? But nowadays I do not begin a study session without doing some warm-ups. So why have warm-ups become so integral? See, warm-ups have a bunch of benefits, but for me I kind of see them as more of a ritual or something that signals to my brain, hey yo, it's time to draw. Kind of like how scientists say that it's a good thing to have a nighttime routine that you do every night, so that when you begin doing this routine, it's somewhat of a signal to your body that it's time to shut down, and something like that can help you sleep better. It's the exact same idea with the warm-ups, where it's kind of a transitionary task, transitioning to whatever I was doing before to what I'm doing right now, and just kind of preps my brain and puts myself in the state of mind of, okay, I'm gonna spend the next 2, 3, however many hours practicing my drawing. And my warm-ups typically involve just spamming shapes and rough sketches onto the canvas. There's absolutely zero structure to it. I just do whatever, and it just kind of loosens my wrist up a bit. And I usually follow this up with a drawing exercise, something like a blind contour drawing. Pretty cool, actually. One of my favorite exercises. You can look it up and try it for yourself. So that's kind of how I do my warm-ups, and after about 10 to 20 minutes of the warm-up, I go into the bulk of the session, which is the art study. For the longest time, I was trying to practice drawing, and I was doing all this stuff like pretty much every beginner does. I was trying to watch tutorials, I was doing all these draw-alongs, but at some point I kind of just looked at it. Now, I was very dissatisfied. I was unhappy with everything because I thought to myself, okay, I'm doing all these tutorials and draw-alongs and they're good, but I feel like there's more to this. I'm definitely missing something, because I wanted to know, how do actual artists practice? Because I know for a fact someone like, I don't know, Sam Desarts is now out here doing YouTube tutorial draw-alongs with Mikey Mega Mega, right? I didn't want to practice by just following YouTube tutorials. I wanted to see these guys who are making the YouTube tutorials, how are they practicing? That's what I wanted to know. So I eventually ended up stumbling upon the glorious concept of the art study. Now, it actually turns out that I'd been doing art studies unintentionally for a little while, although those were horrible. But nowadays, I usually do a handful of art studies pretty much almost every day, and it's my absolute favorite way to practice drawing. The way I do them, I typically take a reference either from life or from like an artist whose work I really like, and I take this reference and I break it down and I study it. Duh. And the way I like to think about it is, like in car mechanics school, they have the mechanic students look at a car engine, take the entire thing apart, and then put it back together piece by piece, and you can imagine how much greater an understanding you would have of the workings of a car engine if you literally did that, disassembling it and then reassembling it. And it's the exact same thing here with the art study, where we're taking the reference, and if I'm doing something like a head study, I look at my reference and I try to break it down. I try to understand stuff like the placement of the facial features, the underlying structure of everything, the proportions, and then once I'm done with the breakdown portion, I go and I draw it for myself, and then I compare, my drawing to the reference, like, what did I get right? What did I get wrong? I take some notes and then I move on to the next one. And bro, it is, oh my god, it is so easy to fall into the trap of trying to make a one-for-one perfect replica of the thing that you're studying. But that is not the goal here. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to gain a deeper understanding of the thing that we're trying to draw. Like the drawings you see on screen right now, I absolutely despise them. They make me want to throw up. There's gonna be people in the comments saying stuff like, oh my god bro, you literally suck at drawing, why should I listen to you? But these right here, these horrible drawings that make me nauseous because of how much I hate them, this is where it's at. These are practice drawings. You're kind of supposed to not like your practice drawings. They're not supposed to be good. If I want to like what I'm drawing, I just go and draw stuff that I'm already good at. But if I ever want to get to the point where I'm making those incredible, level 100 drawings, I'm gonna kind of have to start with the stomach churning level 1 drawings and then work my way up through quality practice. And quite frankly, you have to be a bad artist before you become a good artist. I like the fact that I hate my practice drawings. I like it because I know that I'm pushing myself, and I absolutely love it when 1 week later I draw the exact same thing, and I hate it a little bit less because it shows me literally right in front of my eyes. I can see the fact that I've become a better artist than what I was like 1 week ago. And how cool is that? Apologies for the mild rant. Anyway, that's 2 steps out of 3, right? We've got choosing what to draw with the low info diet, and then actually practicing it with a session structure. But the final piece to this entire puzzle is the 3-week cycle. See, this is a kind of overall long-term schedule for the art study plan. And you can think of it this way: what does every learning institution that has ever existed, schools, universities, scammy online certifications, what do they all have in common? Well, there's a few things, but one of them is the teaching framework that they use. You can think of it this way: imagine you're going into university, right? And you're majoring in mathematics. Now, I don't know why you'd major in mathematics. I don't know what's wrong with you. But say for some reason you choose to major in math. In your freshman year, in your first semester, maybe you take a class on Algebra 1 or something like that. At the end of Algebra 1, are you going to be Einstein? No. Are you going to have a good understanding of the basics of algebra? Yes. Then after that, what do? You go on and do Geometry 1, Pre-Calculus 1, or whatever. And then in the next school year, in your second year of school, they hit you with Algebra 2. And you kind of keep going in that way. Then you go do Geometry 2, Calculus 2, whatever. And then a few years later, you pass Algebra 4. And then you graduate and become a professional mathematician, or whatever people with math degrees do. And that's the exact same idea with the 3-week cycle, except we don't have a big daddy telling us what to study or how long to study for. So we kind of have to do it ourselves with the 3-week cycle. The way I implement it is, say heads is my main focus, so I'm gonna practice heads for 3 weeks, and then after that move on to something else, like torsos for 3 weeks, and hands for 3 weeks, and kind of just go in that manner. And that's kind of the basis for the 3-week cycle. And of course, no, I am not going to become the Picasso of heads after just 3 weeks of practice, but that's not the goal here. The goal is not mastery, the goal is progress over perfection. And of course you can adjust this. It's not like 3 weeks is a sort of magical number. Depending on your own schedule, maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 weeks is gonna what's work for you. But the point is to have enough time and to give yourself a set amount of time that you're going to be practicing that one thing and have the knowledge that you will be moving on. And the reason this helped me so much is because it just added so much more direction to my drawing practice. Instead of wandering aimlessly, there was a concrete plan in place. I knew what I was going to draw, I knew how long I'm going to draw for, and I know what I'm going to do next, which is, like I said, similar to pretty much every syllabus of every learning institution that has ever existed. At least as far as I know. I don't know. But there is a bit of a flaw with the 3-week cycle. There's a bit of a problem with it, and it has to do with, remembering what you drew. How do you actually remember what you practiced 3 months ago, 6 months ago? How do you make sure you don't, lose that ability or something? See, for the longest time, I did not have a solution for that. I didn't even really think about this as a problem. I mean, I kind of had a day in my week where I'd kind of just draw without restriction. I kind of just draw whatever I wanted, but I never had a concrete solution to this whole, forgetting problem until I saw this video by Mark.
So yeah, after I ran drills trying to understand the drawing, I usually fill up a page with drawings where I practically draw and recall what I studied. What I mean by practically is, if I ran drills on torsos, I'm drawing a whole character. That way, I'm executing on the drills I ran for not only torsos that I recently studied, but arms that I studied previously, and also heads that I studied a week before that, or legs that I studied a month prior, and etc. This way, I stay on top of everything, keeping muscle memory on the various things that I've studied in my art journey fresh on my mind.
And it's such an obvious thing to add to the routine, but for some reason I was stupid and I never fully integrated it until I saw that video. So now I have a day in my week where it's Sundays, right? Sundays is usually the day in my week where I just draw for the purpose of recall. And I also sometimes do like a bedtime sketches, like half an hour before I go to bed. I just whip out my sketchbook and just draw what I did maybe that day, that week, plus what I did weeks before, and I kind of combine everything. And honestly, this is the period of time where I have the most fun drawing. It's just fun, just to draw. Drawing is fun. I don't know. And I still feel super stupid for not integrating this for the longest time. So yeah, shout out Mark. Now, despite all of that, there is a chance that a certain doubt, like a certain thought, has popped into your head during the course of this video. At least it's something that I thought when I first started this whole 3-week cycle thing, and it has to do with...
Okay, cool, 3-week cycle, okay, cool. But if I do each body part for like 3 weeks, it might take a while to do the entire human body, right? And that's just anatomy. Still so much more to work on, and that might take a while, huh?
And the solution to this problem is, yes, 100%. It is going to take a while. But let me ask you this. Do you ever plan to stop drawing? Like, do you have a plan when I'm 47 and a half years old, I'm going to stop drawing? Probably not. I would assume probably not. You might not be drawing for 12 hours a day at 87 years old, but you are probably going to be drawing for the rest of your life, I would assume. And in the context of the rest of your life, no, let's think about it this way, right? I know if I rinse and repeat the 3-week cycle for the next 12 months, for the next year, I'm going to be on a completely different level as an artist compared to where I am right now. And the same would go for you. And that's just 1 year. Imagine 3, 4, imagine 5 years, which might seem like a lot of years, but in the context of the rest of our lives, it's literally just a speck. It's nothing. We got, how many more years do we got left? Like 70 years, bro? Okay, I don't know how much time you got left, but you get the point, right? Imagine rinsing and repeating the 3-week cycle for like 4 years. Ugh. For 5 years, damn, that's a lot of things I could work on, huh? And of course it won't be perfect. Life is gonna kick you in the face and things are gonna happen and you're gonna miss a couple weeks, but that's fine. I'd imagine even if you stayed on track for like 40, 50, 60%, even that would probably yield some pretty sick progress. It's kind of wild to think about how just with a bit of consistency, how good we could get at art, bro. It's crazy. Finally gonna be like those insane Instagram artists, huh? But in order to actually get that, the way I like to think about it is time and effort. The way I see it, time and effort is the price to pay in order to achieve progress. Take a while. It's gonna take a couple years because it's kind of like a transaction in a sense. It's like, imagine going to Walmart, get a bread. You can't just walk out with the bread. You gotta give like the $2, right? Like, obviously, right? It's like, what do you give? You give the $2, in return you get the bread. In terms of art, you want to get really, really good at art. You want to receive that gift. I guess you could call it a gift. You want to receive that like mastery over art, you gotta give out the time and the effort. Like that's what you gotta do. You gotta give the time and the effort. In return, you get being good at art. At least that's just how I understand it. I don't know.